The mining station Kepler 442 was dying. Captain Zara Nix watched the emergency lights flicker red across the command center, as her crew of 37 humans worked desperately to keep their asteroid mining operation from complete collapse. The ion storm had hit without warning, frying their main engines and leaving them stranded in the void between stars. "How long do we have?" Zara asked her chief engineer Marcus Chen, who was elbow-deep in a control panel that sparked dangerously with each movement. 6 hours. Maybe 7 if we shut down life support to non-essential areas, Marcus replied, sweat beading on his forehead. "The backup fusion reactor is failing. When it goes, we're dead in space." Zara nodded grimly. They had sent out distress signals for the past 18 hours, but they were in an empty sector of space. No major shipping lanes, no colony worlds nearby, just the cold vacuum and distant stars that seemed to mock their predicament. The communication officer, Lieutenant Sarah Park, suddenly straightened at her station. "Captain, I'm detecting an incoming vessel. It's not human design." Everyone on the bridge froze. First contact protocols raced through Zara's mind, but survival instinct overrode diplomatic concerns. "Put them on screen." The main display flickered to life, showing a sleek vessel that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Organic curves flowed along its hull, and bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its surface like a heartbeat. It was beautiful and alien in equal measure. "Incoming transmission," Sarah announced. They're speaking broken English. A melodic voice filled the bridge, speaking in halting but understandable words. "Human vessel. We detect distress. We are Velkari exploratory ship Singing Tide. Do you require assistance?" Zara stepped forward, her heart pounding. These were the first aliens humanity had ever encountered, and they were offering help. "This is Captain Zara Nix of the human mining station Kepler 442. We have suffered critical system failures and will lose life support within 6 hours. We have 37 souls aboard." There was a pause, then the alien voice returned, warmer somehow. "We understand. Singing Tide has medical facilities and can accommodate your people. We will dock with your station." The next few hours were a blur of activity. The Velkari ship, piloted by beings that looked like tall, graceful humanoids with iridescent skin and large, empathetic eyes, carefully maneuvered alongside the failing station. Their leader, who introduced herself as harmony singer Vale, spoke with Zara through a translation device. "Your people are brave," Vale said, as they watched the evacuation proceed, "to work so far from home in such dangerous conditions. We admire this courage." "We're explorers like you," Zara replied. "We push boundaries because that's who we are." Vale's large eyes seemed to shimmer with understanding. "Yes, we recognize this spirit. It is why we stopped to help." The Velkari provided not just rescue but comfort. Their ship's medical bay treated 3 humans who had been injured during the evacuation. Their food synthesizers were reprogrammed to create meals that humans could digest. They even provided entertainment, beautiful songs that their species used for healing and comfort. For 3 weeks, the humans lived aboard the Velkari ship, while they traveled to the nearest human colony. During this time, friendships formed. Marcus learned about Velkari bioengineering from their ship's grower, a being called Reef Tender Call. Sarah discovered that Velkari navigation relied on sensing gravitational harmonics, something that fascinated her as a communications expert. Zara spent long hours with Vale, sharing stories of human exploration and learning about Velkari culture. The Velkari were peaceful explorers, spreading knowledge and beauty throughout the galaxy. They had no weapons, no armies, just an insatiable curiosity about the universe and its inhabitants. When they finally reached New Terra Colony, the parting was emotional. The humans had prepared what gifts they could, technical manuals, cultural artifacts, music recordings. But Vale waved away any talk of repayment. "Help freely given needs no repayment," she said. "Perhaps someday, if we are in need, we will remember the courage of humans." "That is enough." Captain Zara Nix shook the alien's hand, noting how warm and surprisingly human the gesture felt. "If you're ever in trouble, any Velkari ship anywhere in the galaxy, you call for humans. We'll come running." Vale's expression suggested she didn't quite understand the depth of human gratitude, but she nodded graciously. The Singing Tide departed, leaving the humans safe on New Terra Colony. What the Velkari didn't know was that every human aboard that ship would spend the rest of their lives telling the story of their rescue. The tale spread through human space like wildfire. Children grew up hearing about the beautiful alien ship that saved 37 human lives when no one else would. The story became legend. The legend became culture. And human culture, once it adopts something, never lets it go. 25 years later, when the Velkhari faced their darkest hour, they would discover just how long human memory could be, and just how far human gratitude could reach across the stars. 25 years had passed since the rescue at Kepler 442, and the story had taken on a life of its own throughout human space. In the academies of Mars, young cadets learned about the Velkhari as part of their xenobiology courses. On the mining worlds of the Tau Ceti system, workers shared the tale during their shifts, always ending with Captain Nix's promise. "You call for humans. We'll come running." Dr. Elena Vasquez, now the head of the Human Xenological Institute on Luna, had made studying the Velkhari her life's work. The brief contact had provided enough genetic and technological samples to keep researchers busy for decades. What they discovered was remarkable. The Velkhari were perhaps the most peaceful species humanity had ever theorized could exist. "They have no weapons technology," Elena explained to her graduate students during a lecture. "Their ships are grown, not built using biological processes that create living vessels. They travel the galaxy as artists, scientists, and healers. In 300 years of recorded history, they have never engaged in warfare." One student raised her hand. "Professor, why would evolution create such a pacifistic species? Surely they'd be vulnerable to predators." Elena smiled. "That's the beautiful thing about the Velkhari. They've evolved beyond the need for violence. Their homeworld had no large predators, and their society developed around cooperation and harmony. They see the universe as a vast symphony, and their role is to help it play in tune." Meanwhile, in the outer colonies, the story had evolved differently. Marcus Chen, now a respected engineer running his own shipyard, had trained hundreds of apprentices over the years. Each one heard the tale of the singing tide and learned the lesson that went with it. "The Velkhari didn't just save our lives," he would tell his workers. "They showed us what it means to help without expecting anything in return. But that doesn't mean we forget. When someone saves your life, you owe them everything." The story had influenced human culture in ways both subtle and profound. The Velkhari Accord, signed by all human colonies, established protocols for peaceful first contact, based on the lessons learned from Harmony Singer Vale. The Singing Tide Memorial on New Terra had become a pilgrimage site for those seeking to understand humanity's place in the universe. But perhaps most importantly, the story had become embedded in human military doctrine. Every ship captain, every admiral, every space marine knew about the debt humanity owed to the Velkhari. It was written into their codes of conduct, their rules of engagement, their very understanding of honor. Admiral Sarah Park, the former communications officer who had first detected the Velkhari ship, now commanded the Fifth Fleet from her flagship, the UES Gratitude. She kept a small crystal sculpture in her ready room, a gift from Vale that sang with harmonic frequencies when touched. It reminded her daily of the lesson she had learned in the depths of space. "Sir," her communications officer announced one quiet morning as they patrolled the border sectors, "we're receiving a distress call. It's not coming through normal channels." Sarah looked up from her reports. "Explain." "It's a harmonic frequency, Admiral. Very faint, but it matches the patterns we learned about from the Velkhari archives. Someone is singing for help." Sarah's blood went cold. She touched the crystal sculpture, and it resonated with the same frequency coming through their sensors. After 25 years of silence, the Velkhari were calling for help. The message, when finally decoded, was simple and heartbreaking. "This is Harmony Singer Vale of the exploration vessel Singing Tide. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Our people are peaceful. We do not know how to fight. If any who remember kindness can hear this song, we are near the system you call Wolf 359. We remember the courage of humans." Admiral Park stood slowly, her mind racing. Wolf 359 was deep in unexplored space, far from any human settlements. It would take weeks to reach, and she had no authority to take an entire fleet on what amounted to a rescue mission for aliens. But as she looked at the crystal sculpture, hearing Vale's voice across 25 years of space and time, she realized that authority was irrelevant. Some debts transcended orders, transcended politics, transcended everything except the simple human understanding of loyalty. She opened a channel to all ships in her fleet. "This is Admiral Park. We have received a distress call from the Velkari, the same species that rescued 37 humans at Kepler 442 25 years ago. They are under attack and need our help." She paused, knowing that what she was about to say would either end her career or start a war. "I am ordering this fleet to Wolf 359 at maximum speed. Any captain who wishes to object can note their protest in the log, but we are going. The Velkari saved human lives when they had no obligation to do so. Now it's our turn." Not a single captain objected. As the Fifth Fleet turned toward Wolf 359, Admiral Park sent a message to Fleet Command on Earth. It was brief and to the point. "Velkari in distress. Proceeding to render aid. Will explain later." What she didn't mention was that she had also sent coded messages to every human ship, every colony, every military installation in the sector. The message was simple, using the words that had become sacred in human culture. "The Velkari are calling. We're coming running." Across human space, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Ships changed course, fleets mobilized, marine units prepared for deployment. After 25 years of peace, humanity was going to war. Not for conquest, not for resources, but for gratitude. The response to Admiral Park's call surpassed even her wildest expectations. Within hours of her message reaching human space, the communication networks lit up with responses. Military commanders, colonial governors, corporate executives, and private citizens all responded with the same determination. The Velkari would not face their troubles alone. General Marcus Chen, now retired but still commanding respect throughout the engineering corps, emerged from his peaceful retirement on Titan. At 73, he moved with the deliberate purpose of a man who had found his calling once again. His shipyards immediately began retrofitting civilian vessels with military-grade shields and weapon systems. "I don't care if it bankrupts me," he told his board of directors. "The Velkari gave me 25 more years of life. I'm not going to waste them sitting in a comfortable chair while our friends are dying." On Earth, the emergency session of the United Colonies Council lasted 18 hours. President Chen Wei, no relation to the engineer despite the shared name, faced a chamber divided between those who supported immediate intervention and those who counseled, "Caution, we're talking about committing our entire military to help aliens we haven't heard from in a quarter century," argued Senator Rodriguez from the Centauri colonies. "We don't even know who they're fighting or why." Dr. Elena Vasquez, now elderly but still sharp, stood to address the chamber. "Senators, you're missing the point. This isn't about politics or military strategy. This is about who we are as a species. When the Velkari found 37 humans dying in space, they didn't hold committee meetings. They didn't debate the political implications. They saved lives because it was the right thing to do. The debate continued, but outside the chamber, humanity had already made its decision. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Veterans came out of retirement. Corporate fleets changed their shipping routes to converge on Wolf 359. The largest mobilization in human history was happening not because of government orders, but because of collective memory and shared values. Captain Zara Nix, now retired and living quietly on New Terra Colony, watched the news feeds with tears in her eyes. At 71, she was too old for active service, but that didn't stop her from trying to volunteer. When the recruitment officer gently refused her application, she did something that surprised everyone. She mortgaged her home and bought passage on a civilian transport heading for Wolf 359. "I made a promise," she told the reporter who interviewed her at the spaceport. "When someone saves your life, you don't get to decide when that debt is paid. The Velkari are in trouble, and I'm going to be there when we save them, even if all I can do is watch." Meanwhile, in the depths of space near Wolf 359, the situation was growing desperate. Harmony Singer Vale stood in the central grove of her ship, watching as her people tended to the wounded. The Singing Tide had been designed for exploration and beauty, not warfare. Its living hull could heal from minor damage, but the sustained attacks from the unknown aggressors were overwhelming its biological repair systems. "How many of our people have we lost?" she asked Reef Tender Call, who was directing the healing efforts. 17 singers have returned to the Harmony," Call replied sadly. "And our shipchild is dying. The wounds are too deep, the attacks too frequent." Vale nodded, her large eyes reflecting the bioluminescent patterns that pulsed weakly along the ship's walls. Around them, other Velkari ships hung in space like wounded animals. The peaceful current, the gentle tide, the Harmony's dream, all of them damaged, all of them helpless against their attackers. The enemy remained a mystery. They struck without warning, using weapons that tore through Velkari biohulls like tissue paper. Their ships were angular, aggressive, built for destruction. They didn't respond to communication attempts, didn't seem interested in negotiation or surrender. They simply attacked, retreated, and attacked again. "Why do they hunt us?" asked Wavesinger Nim, one of the younger Velkari. "We have done nothing to anger them. We carry no weapons, threaten no one." Vale had wondered the same thing. In all their centuries of exploration, the Velkari had never encountered such inexplicable hostility. They had met species that were territorial, species that were aggressive, but always there had been reasons. Resources to protect, borders to defend, misunderstandings to resolve. This was different. This was hatred for its own sake. "Perhaps," Vale said quietly, "there are some forms of harmony that can only be defended with discord." As if summoned by her words, the enemy ships appeared again on the horizon. 6 angular vessels, their hulls scarred with weapon ports and sensor arrays. They moved with predatory grace, closing in for another attack, but this time something was different. As the Velkari ships prepared for another assault, new contacts appeared on their biosensors. Ships emerging from hyperspace, dozens of them, then hundreds. The signatures were familiar, the aggressive mechanical emanations of human technology. Vale's heart soared as she recognized the lead vessel. The frequency patterns were unmistakable, even after 25 years. It was Admiral Sarah Park, the young communications officer who had first heard their call for help all those years ago. "Velkari vessels. This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet," came the transmission. "We received your distress call. Sorry we're late to the party." Behind the Admiral's flagship came a sight that defied belief. Human warships, civilian transports hastily armed with weapons, mining vessels converted to carriers, even luxury yachts bristling with defensive systems. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled, and it had traveled across half the galaxy for one purpose. The enemy ships hesitated, clearly unprepared for this sudden change in the tactical situation. For months they had been hunting defenseless prey. Now they faced something entirely different, an angry human military with a debt to pay. Unknown vessels. Admiral Park's voice cut through space with the authority of someone who had spent decades commanding warships. "You're attacking our allies. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response was immediate and predictable. The enemy ships opened fire, their weapons lancing out toward the human fleet. They had made their choice. Admiral Park smiled grimly as she gave the order that would echo through the stars. "All ships, weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten our friends." The Battle of Wolf 359 began with humanity doing what it did best, coordinated violence in defense of those they cared about. The human fleet spread across space in a formation that would have been familiar to naval commanders from Earth's ancient oceans. Battleships formed the line of battle, cruisers protected the flanks, and smaller vessels darted between the larger ships like deadly fish. Admiral Park watched from the bridge of the UES Gratitude as her fleet engaged the enemy. The aliens, whom intelligence would later designate as the Korath hegemony, fought with brutal efficiency, but they had made a critical error. They had underestimated what humans were capable of when defending their friends. "Enemy vessel bearing 27 Mark IV, concentrate fire," ordered Captain Rodriguez from the battleship UES Remembrance. The massive ship's main gun spoke with controlled fury, sending tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds across the void. The Korath ship's shields flared and collapsed under the sustained barrage, but the humans weren't just fighting with superior firepower. They were fighting with something the Korath had never encountered before. Desperation had its own strength, but gratitude was something else entirely. It was focused, determined, and absolutely relentless. Commander Lisa Torres, piloting the converted mining vessel New Friendship, dove her ship through a storm of enemy fire to reach a damaged Velkari vessel. Her ship had been a simple asteroid processor 3 weeks ago, but now it bristled with weapons and carried a full complement of Marines. "This is New Friendship to Singing Tide," she transmitted. "We're coming alongside to provide fire support. Just like old times, right?" Harmony Singer Vale's response came through the translation matrix, filled with wonder and gratitude. "You came. Across all the vast darkness, you came for us. We promised we would," Torres replied simply, even as her gunners raked a Korath fighter with defensive fire. Humans keep their promises. The battle raged for 6 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Korath were skilled warriors. Their technology was advanced and their ships were well designed for combat. But they were facing something they had never encountered before, an entire species motivated by collective gratitude. Captain Marcus Chen Jr., son of the famous engineer, commanded the destroyer UES Legacy. His ship had been built in his father's shipyards, and every plate of armor carried the blessing of the man who had been saved by the Velkari decades ago. When a Korath cruiser targeted a damaged Velkari vessel, Chen's response was immediate and overwhelming. "All forward batteries target that cruiser. Fire for effect," he ordered. "Nobody hurts our friends while I'm breathing." The destroyer's weapons tore into the Korath ship, but Chen wasn't satisfied with just driving it off. He pursued the damaged vessel across the battlefield, his ship's guns speaking again and again until the enemy ship was nothing but drifting debris. On the flagship, Admiral Park coordinated the battle with the cold efficiency of a master strategist, but her heart burned with the same fire that drove every human in the fleet. When her tactical officer reported that the Korath were attempting to retreat, she made a decision that would define the battle's outcome. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "The enemy is not to escape. I want every Korath vessel destroyed or disabled. No one attacks the Velkari and walks away." The human fleet pursued the retreating Korath with merciless determination. Ships that had been merchant vessels a month ago chased down military cruisers. Civilian captains who had never fired a shot in anger brought down enemy fighters with the concentrated fury of protecting family. By the time the battle ended, not a single Korath ship remained operational. Some had been destroyed outright, their hulls torn apart by human weapons. Others drifted powerless, their crews either dead or unconscious. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived and they had come for blood. But even in the aftermath of their fury, the humans showed what truly set them apart. The moment the last enemy ship was disabled, every human vessel turned to assist the damaged Velkari ships. Medical teams transferred to the bioships. Engineers worked to understand and repair alien technology, and supply vessels shared their resources without question. Admiral Park personally boarded the Singing Tide to meet with Harmony Singer Vale. The two women stood in the ship's central grove, surrounded by bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with healing light. Vale was older now, her iridescent skin marked with the stress patterns of extended conflict, but her large eyes still held the same kindness that had saved 37 humans decades ago. "You came," Vale said, her voice filled with wonder. "All of you came." "We promised we would," Park replied. "Humans don't forget their debts." Vale looked around at the human crews working to repair her ship, their faces dirty with biogel and alien fluids, but their expressions determined and caring. "We did not understand when we saved your people. We thought it was simply what any being would do," Park smiled. "Maybe that's what makes you special. But what makes us special is that we remember. Every human child learns the story of the Singing Tide. Every ship captain knows about the debt we owe. When you called for help, we didn't hesitate. But so many of your people," Vale said, gesturing to the massive fleet surrounding them. "So many ships traveling so far. The cost must be enormous." "The cost?" Park looked confused for a moment, then laughed. "Vale, you saved human lives. You could have ignored our distress call, but you didn't. As far as we're concerned, everything we have belongs to you. The only cost would have been living with ourselves if we hadn't come." As repairs continued and the human fleet settled into protective positions around the Velkari ships, a new transmission came through from Earth. President Chen Wei's voice carried across the void with the authority of humanity's government behind it. "Admiral Park, this is President Chen Wei. I'm sure you're expecting to be court-martialed for your unauthorized deployment. Park straightened, ready to face the consequences of her decisions. She had no regrets, but she knew that military discipline demanded accountability. Instead, the president continued, I'm promoting you to Fleet Admiral and placing you in command of the new Valkyrie Protection Force. The Council has voted unanimously. From this day forward, the Valkyrie are under the protection of humanity. Anyone who threatens them threatens us. Park looked at Vale, seeing the alien's expression of amazement and gratitude. Did you hear that? She asked. Vale nodded slowly. But why? Why would your people commit to such a thing? Park smiled, thinking of Captain Nix's words from so long ago. Because when someone saves your life, you don't just say thank you and walk away. You become family, and humans protect their family. 3 months after the Battle of Wolf 359, the true scope of humanity's commitment to the Valkyrie began to reveal itself. What had started as a rescue mission had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history, an entire species dedicating itself to protecting another, the Valkyrie protection. Force had grown from Admiral Park's original fleet to a massive military organization spanning dozens of star systems. Human shipyards worked around the clock to produce new vessels specifically designed for Valkyrie defense. The ships were marvels of engineering, combining human military technology with Valkyrie biodesign principles to create vessels that could both fight and heal. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as the chief xenobiologist for the Protection Force, marveled at how quickly the two species had learned to work together. In her laboratory aboard the UES Harmony, she watched human technicians and Valkyrie growers collaborate on new ship designs. The bioarmor is responding well to the quantum shielding integration, reported Reef Tender Call, his long fingers dancing over control surfaces that seemed to grow from the ship's walls. The ship children are singing with joy at this new strength. Lieutenant Commander James Wright, a young engineer fresh from the Mars Technical Institute, nodded eagerly. If we can increase the neural response rate by another 12%, the ship should be able to regenerate damage almost as fast as conventional weapons can inflict it. This kind of cooperation was happening throughout human space. Valkyrie were welcomed on human worlds, their knowledge of biological sciences revolutionizing everything from medicine to agriculture. In return, humans shared their manufacturing techniques and defensive technologies, creating hybrid solutions that neither species could have achieved alone. But the galaxy was watching, and not everyone approved of humanity's unprecedented commitment. Ambassador Thex Gorlani of the Hegemony Trade Consortium stood before the assembled delegates of the Galactic Council, his multiple arms gesturing emphatically as he spoke. The council chambers on the neutral world of Nexus Prime were filled with representatives from dozens of species, all concerned about the implications of humanity's actions. The humans have upset the balance of power, Gorlani declared, his translator rendering his chittering speech into standard galactic. They mobilized their entire military to defend a species they barely know. What happens when they decide our trade practices threaten their friends? What happens when they claim our mining operations are disturbing Valkyrie meditation routes? Councillor Vrex of the Saurian Federation raised a scaled hand. The humans destroyed an entire Korath battle fleet without attempting negotiation. They showed no mercy, no restraint. This sets a dangerous precedent. From the observation gallery, Ambassador Maria Santos of the Human Diplomatic Corps listened to the proceedings with growing frustration. As Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, she had spent weeks trying to explain humanity's position, but the other species simply couldn't understand it. When called to respond, Santos stood and addressed the assembly with calm determination. Honored delegates, I understand your concerns, but I think you misunderstand the situation. Humanity didn't choose to protect the Valkyrie because of strategic interests or political alliances. We protect them because they saved human lives when they had no obligation to do so. But at what cost? Demanded Councillor Vrex. Your species has committed trillions of credits and millions of personnel to this protection force. Your economy should be collapsing. Your people should be in revolt. Yet somehow you grow stronger, Santos smiled. That's because you don't understand human nature. When we have a cause we believe in, when we're fighting for something bigger than ourselves, we don't see sacrifice. We see purpose. Our people aren't being forced to support the Valkyrie Protection Force. They're volunteering faster than we can process applications. This was true, though Santos didn't mention how bewildering it was to the human government. Economic projections had predicted massive social unrest as resources were diverted to military spending. Instead, human productivity had actually increased. Workers put in longer hours, inventors developed new technologies at record pace, and colonial expansion accelerated as people sought to contribute to the protection effort. The psychological effect was something that human scientists were still trying to understand. Dr. Jennifer Cole, the leading researcher on the phenomenon, had published a paper titled The Gratitude Economy that attempted to explain it. When humans have a clear moral purpose, she wrote, normal economic calculations become irrelevant. People will work for free, donate their savings, and risk their lives not because they're forced to, but because it gives their existence meaning. The Velkari Protection Force has become humanity's collective expression of its highest values. But while humans found purpose in protection, others found opportunity in conflict. Deep in the lawless regions beyond Galactic Council space, the remnants of the Korath hegemony were regrouping. War Commander Krex, the only surviving member of the original Wolf 359 attack force, studied intelligence reports about human activities with growing rage. They defend the soft singers with such fury, he snarled to his subordinates, but humans are still weak flesh. They bleed, they die. They can be broken. His aide, a scarred veteran named Gorth, nodded agreement. Our intelligence suggests they have spread their forces thin. So many ships dedicated to protecting Velkari colonies. So many resources diverted from their home worlds. Krex's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Then perhaps it's time to test their commitment. How far will humans go to protect their precious friends? How much pain will they endure? How many of their own children will they sacrifice? The Korath had spent the month since Wolf 359 rebuilding their fleet, but this time they had allies. Other species that resented human interference, criminal organizations that profited from chaos, and mercenary groups that simply enjoyed destruction had all joined their cause. The new Korath fleet was larger than the one that had originally attacked the Velkari, and it had a specific target in mind, New Terra Colony, the world where the survivors of Kepler 442 had first found safety, was now home to over 50 million humans and a significant Velkari population. It was also the symbolic heart of human Velkari friendship, the place where Captain Nix's promise had first been made. If the Korath wanted to test human resolve, there was no better target. The question was whether humanity's gratitude was strong enough to survive the ultimate test, choosing between protecting their friends and protecting their own people. As war commander, Krex finalized his plans for the assault on New Terra. He had no idea that he was about to discover just how deep human loyalty could run, or how terrible human fury could become when their family was threatened. The attack on New Terra Colony came without warning, just as the Korath had planned. War Commander Krex led a fleet of 200 ships, Korath vessels, mercenary raiders, and alien warships purchased with promises of human technology and Velkari biosciences. They dropped out of hyperspace in the outer system at 0347 local time, when the colony's defenses were at their lowest ebb. Governor Sarah Chen, granddaughter of the famous engineer Marcus Chen, was awakened by emergency alarms screaming through the colonial capital. She rushed to the command center still in her nightclothes, her staff already coordinating the planet's response. How many ships? She demanded, her mind racing through evacuation protocols and defense plans. 200 confirmed hostiles, reported Defense Coordinator Kim Park, a distant cousin of Admiral Park. Mixed fleet composition, but the lead elements are definitely Korath. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding our surrender. Sarah's jaw tightened. New Terra was defended by a single squadron of the Velkari Protection Force. 12 ships against 200. The math was stark, but surrender was not an option. This world held too much history, too much meaning for humanity. Put me through to the attack fleet, she ordered. When the channel opened, War Commander Krex's translated voice filled the command center with cold satisfaction. Human colony, you will surrender immediately. Your Velkari Protection Force will stand down, and you will deliver all Velkari on your world to our custody. You have 1 hour to comply. Sarah looked around the command center at her staff. humans and Velkari working side by side just as they had for 25 years. Her eyes met those of Harmony Singer Vale, now elderly but still serving as the Velkari cultural liaison to the colony. "This is Governor Sarah Chen," she replied calmly. "Here's our counteroffer. You have 30 minutes to leave our system before we destroy every ship in your fleet." Krex's laughter was harsh and grating through the translators. "You have 12 ships, human. We have 200. Your mathematics are as weak as your courage." "You're right about the numbers," Sarah admitted. "But you made one critical mistake. You attacked a human world that's home to Velkari. Do you know what that means?" Before Krex could respond, new contacts began appearing on the system's edge. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of hyperspace signatures as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The display screens in the command center lit up with identification tags. Ships from every corner of human space converging on New Terra. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the battleship UES Vengeance, was among the first to arrive. Her grandfather had been the diplomat who tried to explain human nature to the Galactic Council, but she had inherited a more direct approach to problem-solving. "New Terra Control, this is Captain Santos. We received your emergency beacon. Sorry we're late, but we brought friends." Behind her came ships that defied belief. The UES Gratitude, Admiral Park's flagship, led a battle group of Protection Force vessels. Corporate security fleets from the mining companies arrived flying combat flags. Even civilian transports had been hastily armed and pressed into service. But it wasn't just military vessels. The passenger liner Star of Hope had converted its cargo bays into makeshift barracks for Marines. The freighter Big Betty carried enough ammunition to supply a siege. Even pleasure craft and private yachts had joined the fleet, their owners unwilling to let New Terra face its crisis alone. The most surprising arrival was the ancient cargo hauler Kepler's Dream, commanded by a 90-year-old woman who insisted on being called Captain Nix. Zara Nix had lived long enough to see her promise tested, and she wasn't about to miss the fulfillment of it. "This is Kepler's Dream to all ship," her voice crackled across the communications channels. "I was there when this all started. I made the promise. Today we keep it." Within 6 hours, over 3,000 human ships had arrived in the New Terra system. It was the largest concentration of human military power in history, assembled not by government order but by collective will. From Earth's core worlds to the furthest frontier colonies, humanity had answered the call. War Commander Krex stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His intelligence reports had been accurate about human force dispositions, but they had completely failed to account for human nature. Faced with a threat to their friends, humans had abandoned every other priority and converged on New Terra like an immune system responding to infection. "War Commander," his tactical officer reported nervously, "we're detecting additional hyperspace signatures. More human ships are arriving every minute." Krex studied the overwhelming display of human firepower and felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The Korath were warriors bred for battle and conquest, but they were also pragmatists. They understood when a fight was unwinnable. "Signal the fleet," he ordered reluctantly. "Prepare to withdraw." But Admiral Park, now commanding the assembled human forces from her flagship, had other plans. "Korath fleet, this is Admiral Park. You came here to test our resolve. Consider it tested. You wanted to know how far humans would go to protect our friends. The answer is simple. We'll go as far as necessary." Her next words were broadcast not just to the Korath fleet but to every ship in the system and every listening post throughout the galaxy. They would be remembered as one of the defining moments in human history. "You attacked our friends. You threatened our family. That's not something we forgive or forget. Today you learn what happens when you mistake human kindness for human weakness." The battle that followed lasted only 3 hours, but it became legend throughout the galaxy. The human fleet didn't just defeat the Korath, they annihilated them. 200 enemy ships faced 3,000 human vessels, and the mathematics were as simple as Sarah Chen had suggested. But what made the battle truly memorable wasn't the overwhelming firepower or the tactical brilliance. It was the fact that every human ship, from massive battleships to tiny pleasure craft, fought with the same desperate fury. Civilian captains rammed enemy vessels rather than retreat. Cargo haulers used their bulk as weapons. Even the medical ships fired their small defensive guns with deadly accuracy. When it was over, not a single Korath ship escaped. The mercenary allies fared no better. their vessels scattered across space as debris and wreckage. The message was clear and unmistakable. Threatening the Velkhari meant facing the full fury of humanity. As the human fleet began rescue operations and damage assessment, Harmony Singer Vale found herself standing beside Governor Chen in the command center. The elderly Velkhari's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with complex emotions: gratitude, wonder, and something approaching awe. "So many ships," she whispered. "So many of your people willing to die for us." Sarah smiled, exhausted but proud. "That's what family does for each other. We protect what we love, no matter the cost." Vale's large eyes shimmered with tears, a physiological response humans had learned the Velkhari shared. "When we saved your people at Kepler 442, we thought we were simply doing what was right. We never imagined—" "That's what makes you worth protecting," Sarah interrupted gently. "You save people because it's right, not because you expect anything in return. But humans remember. We remember and we honor our debts." As news of the Battle of New Terra spread throughout the galaxy, other species began to understand something fundamental about humanity. They weren't just another aggressive species seeking expansion or resources. They were something far more dangerous, a species that would sacrifice everything for the sake of loyalty and gratitude. The Velkhari were no longer simply under human protection. They had become part of human civilization itself, woven into the fabric of human culture so deeply that threatening one meant facing the wrath of both. 50 years had passed since the Battle of New Terra, and the galaxy had learned to live with a new reality. Humanity and the Velkhari were no longer separate species sharing an alliance. They had become something unprecedented in galactic history. They were family. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood before the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime, representing not just humanity, but the human-Velkhari symbiosis. At 35, she was young for such a position, but she carried the authority of two species that had fundamentally changed how the galaxy understood loyalty and protection. "Honored delegates," she addressed the assembly, "we gather today to commemorate the 50th anniversary of what historians call the Gratitude Wars, but I prefer to think of it as the moment the galaxy learned what friendship really means. In the decades since New Terra, the human-Velkhari partnership had become the stuff of legend. Human technology combined with Velkhari biological sciences had produced wonders that neither species could have achieved alone. Ships that healed themselves, weapons that could distinguish between friend and foe at the molecular level, and most remarkably, hybrid colonies where both species lived and worked as one people. Dr. James Wright, now the elderly director of symbiotic sciences at the Luna Institute, watched the proceedings from his laboratory. At 83, he had dedicated his life to understanding the unique bond between the two species. His research had revealed something remarkable. Humans and Velkhari were becoming more than allies. They were evolving together. "The psychological integration is unprecedented," he had written in his latest paper. "Human children raised alongside Velkhari display enhanced empathy and spatial reasoning. Velkhari youth exposed to human culture show increased innovation and problem-solving abilities. We're witnessing the birth of a hybrid civilization." This evolution was visible everywhere in human space. On the colony world of Harmony's Rest, human engineers and Velkhari growers had created cities that were part architecture, part ecosystem. Buildings grew from living biomaterial that could expand or contract based on population needs, while human technology provided power and transportation. Captain Lisa Chen Vale, whose hyphenated name reflected the new tradition of human-Velkhari partnerships, commanded the exploration vessel UES Singing Hope. Her crew was 50% human, 50% Velkhari, and they worked together with an efficiency that amazed observers from other species. "Jump calculations complete," reported her navigation officer, a young Velkhari named Tidesinger Knox. "The new system looks promising for colonization." "Excellent," Lisa replied. "Dr. Park, what do your biosensors show?" Dr. Michael Park, great-grandson of the famous Admiral Park, consulted his instruments. "Rich ecosystem, compatible atmosphere, and interesting. I'm detecting artificial structures on the third planet." This was how first contact worked in the post-gratitude era. Human Velkhari teams explored the galaxy together, approaching new species with the combined wisdom of both cultures. They had learned that true strength came not from conquest or domination, but from understanding and cooperation. The results spoke for themselves. In 50 years, the human-Velkari symbiosis had made peaceful contact with over 30 new species. They had ended 6 wars through mediation, established trade relationships that benefited everyone involved, and created a reputation for fairness that made them the galaxy's preferred arbitrators. But perhaps most importantly, they had changed how other species viewed the concepts of loyalty and sacrifice. Ambassador Rodriguez continued her address to the Galactic Council, her words carrying the weight of 5 decades of proof. When the Velkari saved 37 humans at Kepler 442, they didn't know they were planting the seeds of a new kind of civilization. They simply saw people in need and chose to help. She gestured to the observation gallery, where elderly figures sat in places of honor. Captain Zara Nix, now 121 years old and kept alive by Velkari biomedical advances, sat beside Harmony singer Vale, whose own lifespan had been extended by human medical technology. They were living symbols of the bond between their species. Today, that simple act of kindness has grown into something that spans the galaxy, Rodriguez continued. Human Velkari colonies exist in 47 star systems. Our combined fleet protects over 300 worlds. Our research institutions have produced advances in medicine, agriculture, and space travel that benefit every member of this council. Councillor Vrex of the Saurian Federation, now ancient but still serving, raised a scaled hand. Ambassador Rodriguez, your species' dedication to the Velkari is admirable, but surely the cost has been enormous. What has humanity gained from this alliance? Rodriguez smiled, the same expression that human diplomats had worn when asked that question for 50 years. Councillor Vrex, you're still thinking about this in terms of cost and benefit. That's not how humans approach loyalty. She activated a holographic display showing images from throughout human space. Children playing together, their species irrelevant to their friendships, scientists working side by side, their minds enhanced by their partnership, explorers discovering new worlds, their combined abilities making them capable of wonders. We didn't protect the Velkari to gain something, she explained. We protected them because they saved our people when they didn't have to. But what we discovered in the process is that true friendship doesn't diminish when you give to it. It grows. The display shifted to show economic data, population statistics, and technological advancement charts. Human space is more prosperous, more innovative, and more peaceful than it has ever been. Our people live longer, healthier lives. Our colonies are more stable. Our exploration efforts are more successful. All because we chose to honor a debt of gratitude. In the gallery, Captain Nix leaned over to whisper to Harmony singer Vale. Did you ever imagine it would come to this when you saved us? Vale's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with gentle amusement. I thought we were simply helping travelers in distress. I had no idea we were starting a family. The best families start by accident. Nix replied with a laugh that had remained strong despite her advanced age. Ambassador Rodriguez concluded her address with words that would be remembered long after she was gone. Honored delegates, the galaxy is vast and full of dangers. Species rise and fall, empires crumble, and civilizations fade into history. But some things endure. Kindness endures, loyalty endures, and gratitude, properly cultivated, can literally move worlds. She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species. The human-Velkari symbiosis exists because 2 species chose to value friendship over self-interest. We offer that same friendship to any who need it. Because we have learned that the universe is not about survival of the fittest, it's about survival of the most caring. As the session ended and delegates began to file out, the real business of the galaxy continued. Human Velkari trade ships departed for distant markets. Exploration vessels set course for unknown systems. Medical teams prepared to answer distress calls from species they had never met. Somewhere in the void between stars, a small research vessel from an unknown species sent out a desperate plea for help. Their fusion reactor was failing, their life support was critical, and they were far from any known shipping lanes. The first ship to respond was the UES Harmony's Gift, a human Velkari vessel on routine patrol. Captain Sarah Knox Chen received the distress call and didn't hesitate for even a moment. Set course for their position. Maximum speed, she ordered, and prepare the medical bay for casualties. Her Velkari co-captain, wave-singer Marcus, nodded agreement. "It's what our people do," he said simply. As the rescue ship raced through space to save strangers, the legacy of that first rescue at Kepler 442 continued to spread. Because humans never forgot those who helped them, and their gratitude had indeed shattered worlds, not through violence, but through the irresistible power of friendship that refused to be contained by the boundaries of species, politics, or even time itself. The galaxy was learning that some debts could never be repaid, only paid forward, and in the paying forward, everyone became richer,